Yo, what's up guys? In this week's video, I'm going to take some inspiration from Boy Like Hobby Time, make my own wild imaginary West building. I'm Imagine Create Destroy, and let's get started guys. But where should we start? Maybe at the starting point, which is here, with this balsa wood that I'll cut into some walls for the buildings. I used this, what I thought was a 1/72nd scale figure to cut the walls. Then when I was done with the build, I realized it was a 1/48th scale figure, so building's a lot bigger than I was expecting, but that's alright. It's already done. Nothing we can do about it now. Well, it's not done yet, but I finished it, and now I'm commentating the video. So it's done to me, but not done to you. Okay, enough rambling. I cut out the door real quick, then I realized I didn't like the size of the wood slats I had scribed in, so I flipped it around, made them a little bit bigger, then did that to all the walls. Alright, the walls are looking nice and wally now, I guess. We can go ahead and glue them all together. Then I glued this deck on, cut off the excess, finished up with the last wall, and I glued a support beam onto the top here. After that was done, we attached it to the base. Pulled out my little guy here just for one last measurement. Hold up, that sounded a little sus. I pulled out the mini figure for one last measurement. Wanted to make sure the walkway was a nice size for two people to walk side by side. Then we cut off the excess foam here, and it's looking pretty nice. We can move on to the next step. On this little section up here, I want to add a nice little deck. So I'm going to use some coffee stirring sticks, a little super glue. Go ahead and glue those down and trim off the excess. After we finish up, we can move down to the bottom. I added the deck here just for a little extra detail. And I know I haven't done a face reveal, so here's an elbow reveal, I guess, if anybody was curious about what my elbow looked like. Oh, there's a foot finder, but I wonder if there's an elbow finder. Maybe if I lose my job, I could do that instead. Anyway, next up, I'm going to get started on the canopies here. Canopy? Is it a canopy? Nah, whatever. I'm going to call it a canopy. To make it, I used some balsa wood sticks and some balsa wood sheets. Then I just glued on some popsicle sticks that I used for my last build. If you haven't seen that build yet, what are you doing? Go watch that one after this one. Then I'll just add some more detail here. Then I used some balsa wood strips that I cut down for the roof. After that, I'll go ahead and glue on the door and the windows, and then we can move on to the next step. And I'm sure you remember earlier, we glued the model to a base, and then I'm going to glue that base to another base. Then we can add some greeblies to the top. And this is a building from the Wild Imaginary West, inspired by Boy Like Hobby Time series. I wanted to make my own building, but do something a little bit different, so I stumbled on the idea of this gun store. And to make it fit into that world, I added some antennas, some radio equipment, you know, stuff to make it look a little more sci-fi-y. I was going back and forth trying to figure out how I was going to make the gun sign on the front of this store. Then it came to me. I'll draw it out on a piece of paper, glue it down to a balsa wood sheet, then we can cut the letters out of that sheet. But then I realized I suck at drawing, but my wife doesn't. So she drew out the letters for me, and then I did just what I explained. And the sign ended up coming out really good. I was a little skeptical that the paper was going to affect the end result, but after I painted over it, it looked great. The window was in the way, so I glued the sign over it. Then we can move on to adding some detail to the deck. I glued down some offcuts of XPS foam. Then I soaked this piece of fabric in some watered down white glue. Glued that over the top. Now, in Boy Like Hobby Time's Wild Imaginary West, there's a lot of mechs, so I'd like to think there's some mech parts under this tarp, and maybe some tools inside these boxes. Then I just glued down these gas cans, which, I mean, you gotta have gas to power the mechs, right? Then I just used some balsa wood sticks to make some stairs. And once we were done there, I went ahead and primed this thing black off camera. Did make a little mistake. Some of the spray paint bled through and melted away the foam, but it's not too bad. We'll cover that up in the end. We can go ahead and start painting the model up. I wanted to try something new, and I was going to try these contrast paints. This one's Skeleton Horde by Citadel, and as you can tell, when it dried, it basically did nothing. So I primed a little small section white, and then we used this contrast paint, Snakebite Leather, and the Skeleton Horde on the white just to see the results. I like the snakebite leather more, so I'm going to go ahead and prime the whole model white off camera. Now, I don't have any white spray paint, so I had to do this by hand. It was a total pain. And then we use that snakebite leather over the entire model. I let that fully dry, then we'll go ahead and dry brush the whole model with an off-white just to give a little further color variation and depth to the build. While I was doing the painting, we got a little overlap on all these pieces that I want to be black, so I went ahead and touched them up with a little black paint. Then I painted the wires with the Blood Angels Red Contrast paint by Citadel. And lastly, I dry brushed the whole thing with a metallic silver just to give it a more metal look. I'm going to hit the gas cans with that same Blood Angels Red Contrast paint. Then we're going to use a little brown wash on the tarp just to give it a nice weathered effect. I'll paint the windows with the black 4.0. And finally, for the painting, we're going to paint the gun sign. For this one, I use an Athermatic Blue, I think it's called, and that one's also a contrast paint by Citadel. Let's finish this diorama up. I'm going to move back down to the ground. I'm going to cover the whole ground in a desert soil by AK Interactive. And then I'm going to top it off with this desert sand, just to add a little depth to the build. And lastly, we can add some grass tufts. I'm going to use a bunch of colors and a bunch of sizes. This helps make everything look a little more realistic. If you like the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And lastly, we can paint the sides with the black 4.0, and that's another diorama down. Now let's roll the beauties. Peace.